everybody, and welcome to the Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight. This is where we spotlight inspiring business owners. We learn their stories, and they share what drives their success. This episode is sponsored by Credit Bank, where you can get up to $500,000 in working capital in less time than it takes you to drive to the bank. I'm your host, Irv Cruz, and today I am joined by Walter Dusseldorp. He is a passionate advocate for personal development and the founder of the DutchMentor.com. Walter, thank you for joining us.
Irv, I have to say, I love your passion and enthusiasm, and I'll try to match that throughout the conversation. And I love to be here with you and share some insight, and hopefully we can learn something too.
Yeah, wonderful. And the pleasure is all ours, Walter. Once again, thank you for joining us. So I generally always start like this. Tell us a little bit about your business, but go back to the days like when it first started. Like, what gave you the idea to start the Dutch Mentor?
Very good. So right inside of me, as a young boy growing up in Holland, I was all about how much money can I make? And that little entrepreneurial spirit was always within me. When I came to the United States, in 1988, I worked for a gentleman who had a business in pizzeria, bakery, delicatessen. He broke up with his girlfriend, and he presented me with this awesome opportunity at the ripe age of 19. Hey, you want this business? I said, sure, I want this business. And I worked my tail off for a year and a half in a small town in upstate New York, baking early in the morning, making sandwiches and delivering pizzas at night. But it was not a secure business. The typical struggles of a businessman about how can I get the consistent food on the table for my family. And because I had a wife who really wanted to have security, I left that behind. And ever since then, moving forward 20 years, I had great experience, became a paramedic and flight paramedic. I became a leader in the industry, got all the degrees you ever needed, became an executive in a healthcare hospital and laboratory sciences. But I never had that little candle inside me, that burning desire to be out on my own was still there. And so it wasn't until 2021, 4 years ago, I had this great opportunity post-COVID where I had made a considerable amount of money. I just said, I finally have this 2-year runway that I do not need to be worried about money, and I can go out on my own. And so I took the idea of all the experience that I had over that period of time, I bottled it up into a program. And I was finally able to go out and say, market myself. And I knew I could start a small business called the Dutch Mentor, which was a niche, coaching service, but I wanted to do it differently. And I have to tell you, reflect back over the last 4 years, and we can talk about all the struggles of a small businessman that wants to become a medium-sized company, because I think these are important lessons to be learned. The key thing is I never let the candle that was inside of me burn out. I just had to wait for the right time in my life to be able to step out and take that risk. And I've no regrets taking that risk.
That's a great way to start this conversation. And as you know, like when most businesses start or they get developed or the concept for the business comes about, it's generally meant to either solve a problem or address a need. What problem does your business solve, and who does the business help the most?
Great question, right? And then it goes right after the why of why would you start a business, and it should solve a problem, as you mentioned. So as a leader growing up in organizations, transitioning from technical roles and high-performing frontline into leadership, we continuously saw, and I fully experienced myself, this valley of despair, going from doing to leading. And nobody really helped me to become that leader. So what do high performers do? They continue to do in their leadership roles. And they never really reached that level of understanding what leadership. And that's where good coaches and mentors come into play. Now, I learned early on that, providers will send you to a conference or a webinar, or they give you a coach to talk to once a month. All these things are good, but by Monday morning, you forget everything they have said. So it never had a lasting impact. So I created my business with great purpose to sit right into that valley of despair. When somebody is becoming a leader, or for that matter, has been a frustrated leader for a while, to work with me on a daily and weekly basis for an extended period of time, about self-awareness and self-development and solving problems or root causes, and how to establish an operational rhythm that they can function day to day, week to week, that leads to high performance. So that's really the kind of the area that I like. I love working with middle managers, emerging leaders, and leaders who have been frustrated, who were never given the time and attention to develop their leadership capabilities.
And early on, like, what did you do when you first came up with the idea? What did you do to market yourself, to get the word out there that, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I'm actually good at it, so come check me out?
Yeah, so I started in 2012 working with a mentor, and him and I worked out a program called Pure Leadership Power. And I had the luxury in teams that I led. First, it was a team of 1,100 people, and then later on, a team of about 2,000 people. I got to test drive what I was doing within my own organizations. So I had a certain amount of safety and was able to work out the kinks. When I was ready for prime time, all of the relationships that I had built initially, of course, now are part of my Rolodex. But one thing I learned is that, I can take money and throw it at marketing. You might as well flush it down the toilet, right? I might go online and do all kinds of crazy things. Maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't stick. But right out of the gate, the most valuable thing you have is your personal brand and the people that who know you. Because trust is the key to generating business, especially early on. So I went and I created a small advisory board of people who had worked with in the past, who were in leadership positions, who trusted me. And I looked at them to get me started. And that's exactly how it worked out. And even some of them have retained my services for the last 4 years. And I continue to work on that. And as I touch people's hearts, I expand it. And that we can do that through, my social media links, through LinkedIn, through open coaching calls, by giving lots of things away at no cost to get exposure and get people to trust you.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because like they say, or there's an expression out there that says people like to do business that people they like, with people that they like and they trust. So early on, what did it take to actually like launch your business? Because as you know, sometimes depending on what type of business it is, it could be a little capital intensive. So how do you manage to secure any type of financing you needed to launch yourself early on?
So the good thing, because in my line of work, the capital expenses were really essentially setting up an IT infrastructure, from cameras to microphones to
Right, right.
screens, and an home office in order to be able to get started. So my initial upfront capital expenditures were not great, but you do need to pay attention to the details, right? You need to get an official business license. You should get a liability insurance just in case something goes wrong.
Right.
You
That's
need
a
to make
must.
sure you have to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of advertising, because that's like flushing money down the toilet. So the key for me was initially to sit back and say, okay, what is it I need to have to start the business? How can I follow 3 simple rules? How can I provide quality on a daily basis? How can I be value adding on a daily basis? And how can I be consistent? So I invested money into be able to follow through on those 3 things, and then thereby keeping my overhead expenses at the lowest cost point. And it wasn't until I started adding clients to it and I started generating revenue that I was able to expend more money and try new things. Now, many of the things I tried, like marketing and direct and indirect marketing, never led to anything. So, and some, if you do that upfront, that's money wasted, and that might be the difference between survival or you having to go back into the workforce and giving up on your dream. So it's really important that out of the gate that you have a really good plan. So you have to have a strategic plan for yourself. You should
Right.
write a pro forma for yourself, and especially learning how to control your costs up front. And if you do that well and you stay disciplined to that, your likelihood of survival and not have unrealistic expectation that you go from 0 to 100 or 100 to 500, but you
Right. Just
understand,
keep it real.
keep it real, then your expenses can meet that reality and you're more likely to be able to thrive in the future.
That's wonderful, wonderful advice to our listeners. Um, Sometimes the idea or the knowing of that may vary from the execution of it.
Yeah,
as you may
absolutely.
know. And running a business, it certainly has its challenges. So what's one of the biggest hurdles that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I think the biggest hurdle is expansion, right? Is that as an entrepreneur, we all have a dream or at least you should have a dream on how big you want to be. Now, in
Right.
the work that I, as an executive coach or a coach of middle managers, my dream is not to have a $10 million company. My dream was to get into over the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm right in the middle of that today, to build out a reputation of high reliability, high quality, and high performance, and use that vehicle to add 2 or 3 more coaches or mentors to the program itself and
Right.
have a stepped approach. So the biggest hurdle is to get people to learn to trust you who are not in your network. And so sometimes we can refer to that as the cost of acquisition. How much advertising dollars do I need to put in order to be able to acquire a new client?
Right.
Well, in our line of work, that doesn't work that way. It is about building trust. So it is about how do I connect with people? And again, by reaching out to people, is very frustrating because people don't pay attention to you really, right? It is going back to what works, which is the referral. So if you have really good clients and you have serviced them well, for them to reach out to others who they have worked with or are now in leadership positions is a much lower resistance than if you have to do it on your own. So that is one thing I've learned, is that you can push and pull all day long, but if you utilize the people that you have worked with in the past in order to get somebody to open up a door. So once the introduction is made, it's really up to you to shine, right? And so that is one area. The second area comes down to money. Is that, what is my value, right? As an insecure upstart entrepreneur, you want to give your stuff away because all you care about for your ego is to get clients,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Which could lead to your downfall too.
Which on the end of the day, yes, especially if you come in at a very low cost point. Now, sometimes at a low cost point, people will disregard you because they say he's cheap or something must be wrong. But the same token, you can't come in too expensive because then they say, what has he done, right? What has she done? So you have to find a price point that works for you, and to be able to then live up to that particular standard. And I see too many people struggling with that. So they're asking for too little, and they end up missing out. They work much harder than they should be working, especially in the coaching and mentoring business.
So how do you find that medium ground?
Well, the way to do is a little research, right? You need to go online, and today with AI, it's a lot easier than, of course, back
Yeah.
before AI. You
It's a
ask
different
me
world now, Walter.
simple prompts, right? Is that what is your niche? Ask what coaches and mentors may hourly rate is in the industry from high to low, and then find some people in that industry that and reach out to them and have conversations with them. I've found that most people who are in the industry have no problem at all having a conversation with you and how they got started, how they came up with a pricing
Which
system,
is a great thing.
and they, yeah, absolutely. So don't feel like you're in it alone. Reach out to people and have conversations, and then through those conversations, you can find your price point.
That is great advice. And for those of you listening, listen to this man. He knows exactly what he's talking about. Walter, what has been your, so you've been in business since 2021, right?
Yes.
What has been your proudest moment or your biggest achievement thus far?
Well, I think that in the line of work that there's really two things. A, when people come to you and are in despair, and over a period of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they find a new role that exceeded their expectations. So that is very gratifying, right? Is to find ways of getting them into the roles and get them one step closer to their dreams. I love working with people, and I do some pro bono work on the side because I deeply believe, as a mission driven person, if people, especially in middle age, 45 to 55 years old, get suddenly laid off from their roles, it's very difficult for them to get back into the workforce for two reasons.
Right.
A, they've been out of it for so long, they don't even know how to look for a job. And two, they're not ready to be interviewed. And three, there is some age discrimination subconsciously. So I work with people in that category, and I help them set up a really good strategy on how to get ready for the new workforce and how to set themselves up for success. And I've had some really nice success story. And You can go to my website, Ian Selsky, who made a very nice testimony on my website, thedutchmentor.com, about his journey. And he was in despair, ready to sell his house and move back in with his in-laws. And we found him a great job. He's traveling, he's doing great, and he's really prospering today. And that's just a really good, feel-good moment. But it doesn't even have to be that big. I recently got a letter from a former director who worked for me. She retired, and she was part of my program, experimentation early on. And she wrote me a letter and saying, "Listen, you were the best boss I ever worked for." I mean, that is something that melts your heart. Right?
That's great to hear. Absolutely.
There's no greater validation. No money can validate you. It is the words that people speak. And sometimes, and I always encourage people to write thank you cards, write handwritten thank you cards.
Right.
Still has the greatest value compared to anything else. Right? It is that, and she wrote that to me. It melted my heart, and that validated for all the time and effort I put into this that it works.
Yeah, and it's not just the words; it's the, because some people think, I'm an empath, so it's not just the words; it's the emotion behind the words, it's the energy behind the words, because it's not, it's more visceral, visceral. Excuse me, bidia. That's all, folks.
Yeah,
it's all visceral.
Yeah.
So when somebody says something like that, and there's that passion behind it, you feel it.
Yeah.
And that is what drives your passion to be even a better you and to give more of yourself.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So where do you see, go ahead.
I've been a paramedic for 30 something years and had the fortune to saving a bunch of lives over my career. But there's one person every December 15th for the last 14 years calls me up to say, thank you for saving his life. And I tell you,
that's amazing.
We have formed a friendship. I had a young boy, 7 years old, who was in cardiac arrest for over 10 minutes. We resuscitated him, and I have gone to his high school graduation, and I went to his wedding, and he's now a clinical provider, and his mom is forever grateful. So, I mean, those are all the things that are so deeply meaningful to allow the purpose and passion that we have for our work to be validated. So, yeah, it's phenomenal.
Living a life with a purpose and passion. It just doesn't get better than that.
Nope.
So where do you see your business in the next, let's say, 2 years? Any big growth plans or goals that you have in mind?
Yeah. So for myself, that I kind of, because I had some medical issues in the last 2.5 years that I had to overcome, some personal difficulties. It kind of slowed my progress to some extent. But I've said that 2025, and you never give up hope. You always stay resilient. Keep your head above the water. Glasses always half full. Never. You never give up on your dream. So for the next 2.5 years, my goal is to continue to make meaningful connections with people, both in healthcare and other industries. Through this relationship building, I'll create opportunities just like I did when I got started. And the goal is to, build a business, make it 5 times as big as it is today. Meaning I would love to have 3 to 5 full-time mentors who are working with small teams, 3 to 5 people for 1 hour per week for 52 weeks out of the year, or have one-to-one connections in order to be able to teach them, how to get to that valley of despair and become the highly effective leaders that they can be.
That's fantastic. Well, Walter, it's been absolutely great learning about the Dutch Mentor. For those that want to connect, how would they find you?
So the easiest thing to do is go to thedutchmentor.com. On top, just book a free consultation call. Always love to meet new people. I promise you, if you book a call, I'll add value. We'll talk about the things that you find important. My goal is not to sell you anything. My goal is to be able to show you through, the testimonials on my website that if we work together and collaborate together, there's a brighter future ahead of you.
Walter, thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your story. To our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and tune in for more inspiring spotlights. Until then, I'm your host, Irv Cruz, and we'll see you on the next Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight. Thank you once again, Walter.
Thank you for the invitation, Irv. It was a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this video, click here to watch another exciting episode.